Welcome back to another episode of the Untitled Football Podcast. Today we're going to talk about a full recap, review, and analysis of week number 1, the first week of the NFL season. It was a fun week, some good games, some bad games. We're going to get into the good, bad, and the ugly. Here we go on the Untitled Football Podcast. We're going to start it off with the Texans versus the Kansas City Chiefs. This game went a little bit different than I expected it to, but it didn't go too much different than I expected it to, because if you were looking at the different ways this game could go, then this was definitely in the realm of possibility. As the Chiefs cover the 9.5 and the over hit on a last second 2-point conversion or something. I forgot what happened there. But I thought this game was going to go a bit differently. I thought the Texans' offense would be a bit more explosive, and they take more advantage of having multiple fast players and one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL, and Deshaun Watson. But they went to a more quick passing game, which I like in theory, because one of Watson's biggest issues is getting the ball out quick. The O-line wasn't good, so running a longer developing play might not have been a great idea in that game. But that's how you can maximize the skill sets you have. The way they played looks like it would have fit DeAndre Hopkins. If they had DeAndre Hopkins in that game plan, they would have been way better. But if they were stretching the field out and maximizing what they had as their personnel, they could have put up a better fight. Damn. Because the Chiefs didn't even play that well. It's not like Mahomes was typical Mahomes. He didn't even complete a pass 20 yards plus down the field. He has, the lowest ADOT in the NFL right now. That was a different Chiefs offense. Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked great. But Mahomes was, he was okay. He threw, he had 2 interceptions negated. He had one at the goal line where he threw it in, triple coverage. And then it was, intercepted or batted down. It was odd. And then he had one that was negated, and then he had one that was dropped. Mahomes wasn't great today. You could probably say Watson might have been better, but Watson's supporting cast kind of sucked. So, there was a ton of drops, all that type of stuff. Watson got let down by his guys on multiple occasions. Now, I had higher expectations for the Texans, and I still do. Because ultimately, this doesn't tell too much about each team, and I also expected them to lose this game, but it doesn't tell too much about each team in such a small sample size of one game with a shortened offseason and no preseason. But, I would have expected them to go a bit more vertical, of a vertical passing attack than they did. But the Texans, they the Texans, they did allow. The Texans' defense was pretty bad, but the Chiefs' offense also wasn't even that great either. The Chiefs, I think they could run it back. I don't see a reason why they can't. That coach-quarterback combo is one of the best ever, maybe? I don't know. Maybe I'm stretching it, but maybe not really. Mahomes is already probably one of, if not the best, most talented quarterback of all time. And Andy Reid is one of the best offensive minds of all time. So, it's not that far-fetched to say. I don't know why they wouldn't. I don't see why they can't run it back. Like I said, the AFC, I don't know if I said this or not, the AFC is a 2-team race. Every other team needs a ton to go right. It's the Ravens and the Chiefs, and then every other team needs a bunch of things to go right. But, this game, you know what, all things considered, I don't think I factored in the cohesion. I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. The continuity. I don't think I factored in the continuity factor for the Texans having almost basically a whole new group. Most of the guys were there last year, but Will Fuller stepping into a new role. He was used more underneath in the intermediate ranges instead of just the deep threat. Brandon Cooks, like, I didn't factor in the continuity role, and also Titus Howard looked like he couldn't get out of his stance. He was god-awful. Frank Clark was abusing him, and when Frank Clark is abusing you, you've hit rock bottom. Frank Clark isn't a great edge rusher, but, I mean, I guess he's fast. I mean, he looked like Usain Bolt in comparison to Titus Howard. But, I mean, yeah, this game was first game of football. It was a fine game. The Texans got most of their points in garbage time, but yeah. Oh yeah, and Bill O'Brien left like so many points on the table by punting and kicking field goals in spots where it's way more advantageous to go for it. So like that kind of hurt the Texans. And Andy Reid was aggressive throughout the whole game. Even when they were up like 20, he still went for it on 4th and inches at the goal line. Like, that's the type of aggression you want to see from a coach. Like, that's the difference between one of the best coaches in the league. Well, maybe not the biggest difference, but that's really one of the biggest factors in the best coaches in the league versus people that aren't the best coaches in the league. Like, they're going to go for those 4th downs when they're advantageous. Like, they're going to be more aggressive. And Bill O'Brien was way more conservative like he was in the playoff game, and it burned him again. David Johnson was good. Anyway, this game, I'm still high on the Texans. Like, it looks like they could probably win the division, saying that the other 3 teams, maybe except for the Jaguars, like the other 3 teams don't look too hot right now. Like, the Colts didn't look fantastic, and the Titans definitely didn't look fantastic. That was an odd game. They missed a ton of kicks where some of them they probably should have went for them, and they got burned for not going for it because, I mean, they missed the kicks. Gostkowski was terrible, but yeah, this isn't about the Texans. I'm gonna get to that. This isn't about the Titans. I'm gonna get to that later in the podcast. But yeah, I probably spent too much time on this game. We're gonna go to the next game, which is Seattle versus Atlanta. This is a game where I tried to get a little cute with my predictions, go with an underdog upset with the Atlanta Falcons. But little did I know, Pete Carroll was gonna get the ultimate wisdom from the analytics gods, come out and actually let Russ cook for once, and it looks like he passed his cooking class. Russ is finally into the kitchen, and the Seahawks might have entered Super Bowl contention. I didn't mean the rhyme, but sure. Should I keep it going? No. Anyway, that game was beautiful. It was one of the best Seattle games in a while, not gonna lie. They had the second highest behind the Philadelphia Eagles pass rate on 1st and 2nd down at 68%. 2nd and long, they had the first highest pass rate when they passed 100% on 2nd downs and long, 2nd and long. And they went for it on 4th downs. This was such a profoundly opposite game of typical Seattle Seahawks that I don't know if it's going to continue. It's so different. It's such a deviation from the typical Seattle Seahawks that maybe is this going to be a trend? Is this going to be how Seattle plays normally? Is this going to be, we're going to play like this until Russ has a bad game? Is this like, we played the Falcons, we have a pretty bad and young secondary, so we're going to pass because it's our most advantageous? By the way, it's passing the ball with one of the best quarterbacks is probably always more advantageous than trying to run the ball. Is it that, are they going to come out and not pass the ball as much against New England and their defense? It's really going to be interesting how this goes for the next couple of weeks. Is this just a 1-week thing? Or is it going to be a trend for the whole season? Because if it is a trend for the whole season, this team is probably the best in the NFC. And they're definitely in Super Bowl contention. Because they're probably the best, they're the best in the NFC West if they play like this the whole year. Unleashing one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL will take them from being okay, but now they look like the front runners in the NFC if they play like this for the rest of the year. it was a great game from Seattle, but it's so profoundly un-Seattle that I don't know if it's gonna be a trend that we see for the rest of the year. Like, something in me feels like it was a matchup based thing, and like they want Russ to throw more, but when they feel it's advantageous, which is against pretty bad secondaries like Atlanta. So maybe we see this game plan more often, but we don't see it as their primary game plan. I want them to do this all the time. This was great. Atlanta, on the other hand, they weren't terrible. Matt Ryan was spreading the ball out to everyone, as everyone in fantasy ate. Everyone was great in fantasy. Julio Jones made some spectacular catches. Matt Ryan made some good throws. The Falcons, they're the Falcons. Scored 25, most of which came in garbage time. The Falcons are the Falcons. They'll probably... I picked them to win as an upset, but, then Seattle came out and played like this. Their secondary still sucks. The Atlanta secondary is still bad, which is a problem if you're going to go up against pass-heavy offenses. So, that being said, yeah, that's Seattle versus Atlanta. I really just wanted to talk about Seattle and how, the way they're playing right now, passing the ball often and early and often, is definitely something I want to see going on into the future. But let's get on to the next game, the massacre in Baltimore, the Ravens versus the Browns. This game was disgusting. So, I had this game on along with a bunch of other ones. This game was bad. The Browns looked just as out of sync and just as bad as they did last year. So, maybe Freddie Kitchens wasn't the problem. I'm not quite sure what is wrong with this team. They weren't really good at all. Baker was bad. This team sucks. Odell was missing throws. This team still looks just as out of sync and just as bad as it did last year. The Browns are an absolute dumpster fire right now. But Baltimore, on the other hand, Lamar Jackson just continues to defy the odds of everything, as he comes out and throws 3 touchdowns on 20 attempts. So, it's only a 1-week sample size, but as of right now, it looks like he might have escaped the regression monster, which, isn't the most unlikely thing. Like I said, that him and his threat as a runner will probably give him more percentage points from a touchdown percentage standpoint and raise his probability of passing touchdowns because of how big of a threat he is, how big of a threat he is running the ball. He made some great throws, dropped in some dimes to Marquise Brown. The Ravens look great again. Like I said, when I talked about the Chiefs, this is a 2-team race in the AFC. Every other team needs a ton to go right. The Ravens covered 7.5. The under hit. Missed it by 3.5 points. The Browns sucked. They had some bright moments. They had a good drive in there, like their touchdown drive. Other than that, it was just a desynced, bad offense again, which is kind of alarming because you changed what was perceived to be the issue, and you still have the same issue. Let me talk about something from a fantasy standpoint, though. The Browns' backfield, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt were splitting time. That makes neither of them a viable fantasy option. So people who had Nick Chubb as an RB1 might be in deep trouble right now because it doesn't look like he's gonna get that type of volume to live up to that draft status. But yeah, that's really the only thing I have to say about the Browns. Other than they look bad, bad. And Baltimore looked great. Their defense looked good. Calais Campbell made some plays. Marlon Humphrey made some plays. Their defense is good. Their offense is good. They're a good team. Baltimore is looking to make it to the Super Bowl. They have a chip on their shoulder from losing to Tennessee. And I want to add something. I'll say that for a different video. I really don't want to go in depth about that right now. Let's just stay focused on the review. And now we're going to go to the Bills versus the Jets. Josh Allen's first ever career 300-plus passing yard game. That's interesting. I mean, he wasn't that good, though. Like, it's not like he was an elite quarterback today. Like, he was still Josh Allen. He was just Josh Allen with more volume. He was just Josh Allen 46 times over. He missed some throws. He made some pretty good throws. He ran some touchdowns. I mean, like, from a fantasy standpoint, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the damn league. From a regular football standpoint, I mean, he was only just fine. Like, he fumbled twice. I think he had an interception drop. Like, he was Josh Allen with more volume. Stephon Diggs made his debut. He was pretty good. He had 86 yards on 9 targets. John Brown had more targets than Stephon Diggs. We might have a problem on our hands for fantasy. Outscored Stephon Diggs. But let's go look at the Jets. The Jets were bad. Like, they're really bad. Like, they might be the worst team in the NFL now that the Redskins or Washington decided to win a game. So, I mean, I don't want to go too far in depth on this game. This game was a game. Like, the Bills' offense still isn't like a juggernaut. Like, they were fine. It was like against arguably the worst team in the NFL, but it is what it is. Like, the Bills, all I have to say, like, it was an expected game. Josh Allen was Josh Allen, but 46 times over today. Yeah. That's this game. Panthers versus the Raiders, and now I just realized I'm not saying the score. Raiders over the Panthers, 34-30. I mean, this game was high scoring. The Raiders covered in the overhit. I had the Panthers winning. I mean, they came like a couple inches to winning the game, but I mean, Bridgewater had a pretty solid debut for the Panthers. I mean, it's not like he was the greatest quarterback in the world, but like he was alright though. Christian McCaffrey only had 4 targets, which, I mean, looking at it from a fantasy standpoint, isn't great. He might not receive the massive volume that he had last year, which really changed. Like, I mean, I kind of expected that to happen, I expected more touchdown regression from Christian McCaffrey. It doesn't look like that's happening because he still had 28 points for fantasy, I think. But Josh Jacobs for fantasy, he was amazing. Derek Carr, from a regular football standpoint, was aggressive, and this might be the most aggressive we've ever seen Derek Carr. He was throwing it downfield to Henry Ruggs, and Henry Ruggs got injured. Josh Jacobs had one of the greatest games to end in a 3.7 per carry. He broke like 10 tackles to only have 3.7 per carry. Interesting. But Henry Ruggs was great when he was on the field, making some plays down the field, like forcing some more aggression out of Derek Carr, which might make me change my outlook on this team. Carolina, I mean, they scored points. Both secondaries suck. Like, both teams can't cover anybody. The Panthers go into Tampa Bay next week, and, I mean, they'll probably lose, but this isn't about the preview yet. That's a different podcast coming out probably on Thursday. Yeah, I mean, some of these games I don't need to spend that much time on. Like, it was a high-scoring game. Josh Jacobs had 3 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs looks like a fantasy beast right now. And also, I talked about Henry Ruggs bringing the aggressiveness out of Derek Carr, but for some reason I didn't mention that. Robbie Anderson also did the same for Teddy Bridgewater, as he's one of the better deep threats in the NFL. Teddy Bridgewater targeted downfield more often than he normally does. Like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he targeted down the field more often in this one game than he did in all of his games at in New Orleans. Like, in a single game they did in New Orleans. But New Orleans also doesn't really have deep threats either, so Like, it's kind of hard to throw vertical when you don't have anyone that really wins vertically consistently. But then again, I'll probably get into that a little bit later when I talk about the Saints. But yeah, that's the game. I don't want to spend too much time on this game. It was like a pretty, like, it was a fun game, 34-30. Both of these teams are probably scraping the bottom of the barrel. Well, both of these teams are probably a tier above the bottom of the barrel. Like, I don't know what you'd call that, but yeah, neither of these teams are really going anywhere. Damn. Bears versus the Lions. This game was interesting. The Lions took a 20-point lead, and then they choked the lead to a Mitch Trubisky-led Bears team, which, whatever. It's not like Trubisky was even good for most of the game. Like, he had a 55% completion rate, 58% adjusted completion rate. That adjusted completion percentage places him at 31st out of 32. Like, he wasn't good, and they won the game. And even still, the Lions, dropped a pass in the end zone to win the game. This game is weird. And then, Matt Stafford had a pretty unlucky pop-up interception for which ended up winning the Bears the game. This game was weird. This game is pretty odd. The Bears won. I really thought that they would lose. Mitch Trubisky just won a game. They're about to sign him to a mega million deal now. Nah, but I was like, why is Nick Foles not starting? How was Nick Foles not starting? And the Bears somehow win the damn game. That's crazy. And Mitch didn't even play that good. He made a good throw to Anthony Miller, which won them the game, but that unlucky pop-up interception is really the reason they made it there in the first place. The Lions' offense stalled as well, but yeah, I still don't. I don't know. I had some relatively high expectations for the Lions. I was I might have to temper those because losing to Mitch Trubisky and the Bears is never a good sign. But they did have Galladay out. Okudah was injured. The Lions dealt with some injuries, but it is what it is. And Allen Robinson said he wants to. He didn't really. I don't know if he said anything yet, but basically he said something by deleting all Bears stuff from his social media profile. Understandably so. Who really wants to play with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback? And an organization that chooses Mitch to be a starter over someone that's making $24 million that you went out and traded for, when you could have got an actual better option and a real quarterback that would have beat out Mitch Trubisky. Playing for an organization like that might, isn't the most optimal thing. Even though Trubisky won, I'm still not going to back off the fact that Nick Foles should be starting, because it's really not like Trubisky played well. He just won the game. It's not like he had a good game. Whatever though. This game is just weird. Jalen Johnson looked good though. He's one of the. Well, he's fourth in second in pass breakups technically, because there's a bunch of people tied with 2. The rookies are the 2 people near the top in pass breakups this year. C.J. Henderson leads the league with 3. Jalen Johnson has 2, and then some other people have 2. But Jalen Johnson looked pretty good. This Bears defense is a pretty good unit still. It's just that the offense is so bad that it's just going to drag them down on a week-to-week basis. And it didn't today, but it's not like Trubisky played well. They lucked their way into 3 touchdowns. Kind of shows how good Matt Nagy is a bit. I don't know. But they got some short field. They got a bit lucky. It is what it is. Next game. Jaguars pull off a little bit of an upset, 27-20 over the Colts. This game was kind of weird for the fact that the Jags won, but I did well, I didn't say they would win today. Like I said that they would. I said they wouldn't bottom out because Minshew was too good. Um, and like that came to fruition. He was like 19 for 20. I mean, add a little bit of context to that. He only had like 3 passes that traveled over 5 yards in the air, but he was still pretty good though. Didn't make too many mistakes. Had a touchdown. I think he had a fumble though. But Minshew is a quarterback that you really just can't tank with because he is too good to tank. Like, there's a legit argument that he was better than Kyler Murray, and people are just writing the Jags off when they have an actual good quarterback. Like, sure, the rest of the roster isn't that good, but when you have a quarterback that's actually pretty good, like, and the roster, and in fact, the roster isn't even terrible around them. Laviska Shenault, who I loved as a draft pick, I love their draft, like, from the approach of trying to push forwards to next year. Like, I was a bit lower on Henderson coming out, but I also wouldn't have been surprised if he was one of the best cornerbacks from the draft class. Like, because quarterback play is really hard to predict. He had the movement skills. He had a year of production where he was pretty great in 2018. Like, I wouldn't have been I'm not surprised that he's playing well, even though I wouldn't have expected it. Like I thought that he might be, like, I didn't think it was a low probability he would be good because he was good in college for at least a year. Like, 2019 was kind of rough, but he has the movement skills, and cornerback play is really difficult to predict. C.J. Henderson was great last night. Was great yesterday. Minshew was also really good, and they upgraded at running back with James Robinson. Okay, just kidding, but he's just about where Leonard Fournette was in terms of his career per carry. Leonard Fournette was like 3.9 or 4.9 if you don't include the playoffs. But James Robinson is at 3.92. And, like, maybe James Robinson is someone you want to target in fantasy, though, because he gets all the volume for the Jags. So, like, the opportunity is more important than the talent, but he didn't score that much and had all the volume. And he didn't face any stacked boxes and had, like, 3.9 per carry. So, it is what it is, though. The Colts, on the other hand, I don't know. Like, I was lower on the Colts coming in. Like, the Colts weren't disgustingly bad, but they also weren't, I don't know. Phillip Rivers threw 2 interceptions. Like, people, including me, would somewhat blame his lack of success on the offensive line. Sure, but he really wasn't making great decisions. And this game wasn't that great. They didn't look terrible, though. Like, some of the picks weren't, like, one of the picks wasn't Rivers' fault, really, but like, to be fair, like, the O-line was banged up coming into the game, so it's not like that problem was fixed, and the weapons aren't fantastic in Indianapolis, and it is a low sample, but it doesn't look too hot for the Colts right now. I was already lower on them. I mean, they might be fine. Like, the Jags are better than I think they're better than they're definitely better than they're given credit for. Like, I don't think they're the worst team just because they have a better quarterback than all those teams that are lumped into that number 1 overall pick conversation. But, like, yeah. Next game, Minshew was great, man. Minshew's a tank-proof quarterback. He's Fitzpatrick-esque when it comes to not going to get you the number 1 overall pick, but he damn sure isn't going to bring you to the playoffs either. You're going to be stuck at, like, 8, 9, 10. Like, you're going to miss out on that number 1 overall pick guy because your quarterback that you have right now is too good to be bad, and the roster you have around your quarterback is too bad for the team to be good. So you're just gonna, you're not gonna go 8-8, but I knew this Jags team would be better than they were giving credit for. Like, Minshew's an actual quarterback compared to some of the other teams in that number 1 overall pick conversation. So, yeah. That's Colts versus the Jaguars, and I mean, it's not that surprising to me, but it's one of the more surprising things of the week. We have Green Bay versus Minnesota in a game in which Rodgers looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers was great in that game against Minnesota. He was getting the ball out quick, for one. He wasn't holding on to it forever. He had like a 2.25 yards per attempt while still making those special plays. Like, this was one of the best Aaron Rodgers games in a while. And I think I alluded to this in the Seahawks section. If Rodgers plays like this team is going to be great. Now, this is a bit of a deviation from what we've seen over the last couple of years from Aaron Rodgers. But this is still capable. He's Aaron Rodgers. The Vikings look about as bad as I thought they would look in the secondary. They're starting a ton of rookies. Well, Jeff Gladney's not even starting. Like, you might as well start both Gladney and Dantzler. I don't know why they didn't do that, but like, you're starting all rookies in the secondary, and you're going up against Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. Marquise Valdes-Scantling's not even that good, but his speed was too much to handle for, like, the Halton Hills of the world. So, like, this set of weapons, like, I don't know, like, I don't think this is replicatable against a better team. The Vikings are just bad on defense like I expected them to be. Like, I love their draft, but like I said in the other video, like, it's not gonna, it might not manifest itself this year because you have to hit on all your picks in year one, which hitting on all your picks in general is something that doesn't happen often. And hitting all of your picks and everyone hitting the ground running in year one is also rare. The offense also sucked until garbage time, so Minnesota is in trouble, like I expected them to be. No, they might not be in too much trouble. Like I said, it's low sample size, but it did not look good. It looked ugly out there for their secondary. They looked god-awful, atrocious. They were getting flamed. They weren't getting pressure on the quarterback either. Like, they blitzed 43% of the time, and Rodgers was only pressured on like 9% of his dropbacks. So the Vikings have a pretty big issue. Pretty big problem. I mean, like, I was never high on the Vikings. Like, I thought they were like a 7-win, 8-win team at very best. But, like, if their secondary is going to perform like this, like, a guy like Dantzler could grow and develop over the course of the season and become a viable option at cornerback, but it really, really wasn't good for him at all. And Gladney didn't play much. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why just to throw him out there just to at least see what he has. Like, the other guys you have out there aren't cutting it either, so it is what it is, though. Packers and Aaron Rodgers, they have a bright future ahead of them, or bright season ahead of them, if Rodgers is going to continue to play this well. Weren't the Vikings favorites going into that game? That was always insane to me, but again, like, I don't know why people like the Lions. The Vikings draft is good, and the Packers draft was bad. I think that's why the line was set that way, but, like, I don't know. Even though their draft was better, they had to hit on, like, all the guys, though. But, like, yeah, if the Packers keep playing like this, they had they were second in EPA per play this past week, and they were, like, it was probably the best the offense looked in a minute. Like, Aaron Rodgers was making plays out of structure. He was getting the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. Like, it was, like, if Aaron Rodgers was playing like this, like, the NFC just added another powerhouse, even though, like, you could say they already were because they were in the conference championship, but I really didn't think they were that good. Like, they played, like, 7 backup quarterbacks, so, like, there's a bit of an asterisk next to that 13-3. Like, every time they played a good team, too, they got pounded. Like, it is what it is, though. They are, like, if Aaron Rodgers is going to play like the best quarterback in the NFL, potentially, then, I mean, the Packers are, like, if Rodgers is going to play like 2011 Rodgers, like, even though the weapons aren't that good here, though, or as good as they were in 2011, 2010-ish, like, he could still put up numbers because I mean, right now he's playing that well. Like, if he's going to get the ball out quick and make the special plays, like, this is a mixture for success here in Green Bay this year. And I was lower on them coming into the year, but if Rodgers is going to play like this is definitely that could be absolutely lethal in like a playoff game or any given game. If Aaron Rodgers is going to play this well the whole season, which we don't know is going to happen. Well, that's this game. Vikings suck. Packers are on the uptrend. If Rodgers is going to play like this, which I keep saying, but that's what it really hinges on. Because if he plays like he did in 2018 or 19, then this team is like a 9-7 team because they have a pretty difficult schedule. So, yeah, let's get to the next game. It's versus the Dolphins. Patriots win 21-11. And this game was low scoring. The Pats didn't impress me too much. Like, it's not like they went out and blitzed the Patriots. I mean, the Dolphins. Well, I mean, physically they do, but, like, on the scoreboard, it's not like they went and ransacked them. Like, I mean, they only scored 21 points. And, I mean, I like the Dolphins' defense. I think it's pretty good. But, like, they only scored 21 points. Like, that won't work against, like, the better teams in the NFL. But good thing for them, they have 3 duds in their division. So, I mean, maybe not, but games that they could win. Because I'm high on Miami. I mean, the Bills have a strong roster, bad quarterback, but it is what it is. Cam Newton looked good, though. Had 2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, passing the ball, he was fine. It was nothing special. I mean, he only threw like 3 incompletions, though, but other than, like, it was really nothing special. Missed a couple throws. Like, when he missed, he, like, missed a couple throws. It was a decent game for Cam Newton. Like, maybe they didn't show off all the bag of tricks. Like, there was nothing that made me go, this is a really strong team going forwards. I mean, they ran the ball well, but they didn't score that many points. So, I mean, it's not like they had an all-time great performance. And Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 3 interceptions. So, like, this damn sure won't fly against a better team. Like, if they're going to only score 21 points, which probably won't happen every game. Like, I mean, there was nothing that made me say, oh, yeah, this team is a major threat now. Like, it was a fine performance from New England. Maybe the Fitz magic has wore off and it's time to put 2 in. I kind of like what the Dolphins have from a roster standpoint. Except for the O-line, that's pretty shitty. But other than that, I kind of like what they have from a roster standpoint. But yeah, this game was really the Patriots game to lose, and they didn't lose it. I mean, it was nothing special about the performance. It's just Cam Newton's in New England now, changing of the guard. Next game, Washington versus the Eagles. Washington wins 27-17, and this is probably the more surprising game of the week for me. You know, this game, I had the Eagles winning. The Eagles, I said if they lost, have a problem. They have a big one right now. A team from a person that thought the Eagles were gonna do like relatively well, pretty well this season. This is actually really shocking. I mean, like, to be fair to the Eagles, they had a ton of injuries and stuff, but I mean, Washington's pass rush looked really good. Chase Young was good. Everybody else kind of, I mean, they blitzed a ton. And it paid off. Now, relying on yourself to get 8 sacks a game is unrealistic and doesn't happen often week to week because sacks are something that are so volatile from week to week. So, I doubt they get 8 sacks, especially next week versus the Cardinals, who are like a screen-heavy offense who will get the ball out really quick. You're not going to get 8 sacks against them, but in a straight drop-back passing game, maybe they could do a little bit to Kyler Murray. He likes to hold on to the ball a bit too long, but DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to wreck the secondary and get open because the secondary is still garbage there. Carson Wentz couldn't complete an open pass to save his life, and then Zach Ertz dropped the ball for a first down that would have probably won the game, but whatever. Like, the Redskins got lucky, and they played like shit on offense. So, I mean, it is what it is. Washington, I mean, both teams played terrible. Like, this was that was an ugly game, a really ugly game. Washington has one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and if Carson Wentz is going to play like that every week, then the Eagles have one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So, I would probably bet more on the Eagles to, recover from this loss than the Washington to continue to keep winning, because they'll probably both regress towards the mean, which means Washington is going to be closer to like a 2-14 team, and the Eagles might be closer to like 9-7. So this game was interesting because Haskins and Dwayne and Carson Wentz were just, I don't know, maybe they were having a contest to see who could miss the most throws. They both looked terrible. Like, Jalen Reagor had a big deep bomb that he caught, and then Reagor was overthrown and missed on one at the end of the half, I think. And then Carson Wentz missed like the first half of the game was a precursor to the second half of the game. Like, Carson Wentz, when he missed in the first quarter, on the first half of the game, which wasn't often, he missed bad. And then the second half, he was just all out bad. He just sucked. The Eagles could have a pretty big problem on their hands, and Washington, I mean, I would temper my expectations for next week if you are a Washington football team fan. There were some pretty encouraging things there. Ron Rivera ran a pretty good amount of play action, ran some pre-snap motion, and, I mean, they blitzed a lot to try to protect the coverage unit, which is terrible. And, I mean, they went for it on fourth down, even though they only did it like once in like very obvious situations where they should, like, they had to do it there, or it would have been like, what are you doing? But, yeah, Washington is winning the division right now, just like we all expected. Offense that poor, I really do find it hard to sustain winning the division. Although, I mean, they definitely won't win the division, but I find it really hard to sustain winning when you're going to have what's potentially the worst offense in the NFL by most metrics. They have like the lowest yards per play on offense. They have like the second lowest EPA per play on offense. Like, they are a bad offense. Like, that's the only way to split it. Dwayne Haskins had a 58% adjusted completion percentage, which is bad. This team did not play well on offense, and they won the game because the other team just played worse. Somebody had to win. It was a bad performance from both sides. Washington is 26th in EPA per play, EPA per drop back right now, and then EPA running, and then running the ball, they are also 26th in EPA per play. Like, they're a bottom tier offense, which, I mean, when you have one of those, your defense either has to be the greatest of all time every week to even win games, or you won't win games. So, yeah, but now on to the 4 o'clock slate, where the Chargers faced off against the Bengals and won 16-13. I chose the Bengals in this game. They probably should have won the game, but at the same time, they didn't really deserve the second drive anyway, after whatever Joe Burrow did the drive before. Just shovel pass it into Melvin Ingram. He didn't really look too comfortable out there. I mean, understandably so. That offensive line is terrible, but like, I mean, the first couple quarters of the game, like the first half, the first 3 quarters, like most of the game except for the last 2 minutes, Joe Burrow was kind of that touchdown run was nice, looked like Le'Veon Bell in his prime right there, but other than that, he wasn't great. I mean, he was under pressure a lot, and the Bengals insisted on doing these 5-man protections when you have like a bottom 2 offensive line in the NFL. I don't get it, but like Los Angeles also didn't play well. They had a terrible secondary. I mean, not secondary. They had a terrible quarterback. They had a terrible offense. They had a terrible offense. Mike Williams was the lone bright spot, kind of made a ton of crazy highlight reel catches, but they didn't move the ball well as I expected them to. And the Bengals didn't move the ball all that well either. But Joe Burrow's biggest plays were negated. John Ross dropped a touchdown, and then that other out route to John Ross, or he was out route a comeback route. I don't remember exactly, but like, I mean, he dropped that again, like, and then the OPI, and then Randy Bullock missing the kick. I was higher on the Bengals coming into the season. I still am, but they probably should have won the game, but they didn't due to the unforeseen circumstances, like Randy Bullock not even hitting the net on the field goal. But yeah, the Chargers, it's not like the Chargers played well either. Like, the Chargers kind of sucked, and they just made it out. But they didn't play well either. Like, their offense was bad, and the Bengals offense wasn't great either, but until like the last 2 minutes, and then Joe Burrow decided to go be Joe Burrow and then show why he was the number 1 overall pick. Made a ton of throws that drive. That drive alone was pretty encouraging, but I don't think you can just look at that one drive, which is, a really small sample size, and side of a really small sample size, which is 1 week. But anyway, on top of that, both teams, well, profoundly the Bengals, who were at midfield on 4th down and 2, and decided to do the delay of game, try to get him the jump route of things, opposed to like going for it on 4th and 2 at the fucking 50. I don't know, just an idea. Like, that was pretty odd. What else happened? And then like Zach Taylor burned all his timeouts in very odd time. Like 6 minutes left and you call your last time out. I mean, whatever. It ended up working to get the ball back, but like it took a little bit of lucking into it. But it is what it is, though. They ended up losing the game due to a kick. But let's get on to what was perceived, at least before the week, to be the game of the week: Bucs versus Saints. See, this game was an interesting game because both teams' offenses didn't look great. Like, Brady threw 2 interceptions. Breeze was... honestly, I'm probably more concerned about Breeze than I am about Brady because, I mean, the offense looked almost like how I expected it to. And it looked almost like Brady hadn't played with those guys and in a different offense for 20 years. But whatever. Like, the first interception was a miscommunication. Like, and he also made some really good throws that were dropped. And, like, the game was better than the perception of it, for sure. Like, he missed some throws, though. But he still made some amazing throws. And still threw that bad pick where he left it inside on the out route. Like, it was an odd, I mean, I'm more encouraged about the Bucs than I am about the Saints, because at least there was some sort of chunk play element to their offense, and Brady could still sling it into some pretty tight windows down the field, which, I mean, Drew Brees can't. I am thoroughly concerned about this offense. They're going to have to be perfect every game or you're done. Like, they have to be perfect every game or they're done. Like, Drew Brees can't even throw, like, out routes anymore. Like, that deep out route to Jared Cook with the ball barely made it there. Like, I mean, things like that just, like, he might not have the arm to do stuff like that anymore. Like, I'm more concerned about their offense and their 4.1 yards per play, which was second to last in the NFL. I'm way more concerned about that than I am about the Buccaneers. Like, I'm way more concerned about the fact that you could just pin your ears back and just cover, like, underneath stuff because you're not going to get beat over the top. I mean, like, he can hit an open one. He hit Jared Cook, but other than that, he wasn't great. He had 160 yards on 38 dropbacks. Offense as a whole had 4.1 yards per carry. 4.1 yards per play. The run game wasn't really that good either, but they still won the game, huh? Interesting. Alvin Kamara had a 1.6 per carry, but Asla had like 2 touchdowns. So it is what it is. Because I'm more scared about the Saints because I didn't expect the Bucs to win this game. I didn't expect them to look great this game. Like, the Saints defense is pretty good. Brady's in an unfamiliar situation. Like, did you really expect them to come down and hit the ground running and look like the Kansas City Chiefs? I sure as hell didn't. Like, I said it was gonna be a rocky start, but Brady still had some deep connections to like Scotty Miller and guys like that. Like, and Mike Evans was injured too, so. I mean, this team is fine. Their defense was good. So, like, at the very minimum, this offense could just be good enough, and their defense could help them out, and they could win. Like, they might underperform from a record standpoint, but they could still, like, they could probably, like, I don't know. This team is fine. Like, they looked almost how I expected them to look. There was some encouraging things, some less encouraging things, but, like, Brady can still throw the ball. And he can still throw it well. Unlike Drew Brees. Drew Brees had a couple dropped interceptions. He missed some throws as well. He couldn't throw the ball further than 10 yards down the football field. And, I mean, that you just can't win like that. Honestly, you can't win like that. Like, you have such a one-dimensional offense. Like, I don't know. I'm more afraid for them than the Bucs because the Bucs I did not expect to come out and look spectacular, and they didn't look spectacular, and even still they weren't terrible. Like, the Bucs are fine. The Saints, who won the game, I'm less encouraged by the Saints because Drew Brees didn't look too great in that game, but both defenses looked fine. The Bucs eliminated Michael Thomas from the game, basically, which probably didn't help Drew Brees. He's like Mike Thomas still made some really good plays. When he had that slant route, took a major hit, still held on to the ball. Speaking of slant, everyone says Mike Thomas only runs slants. I mean, what else is he going to run? His quarterback can only throw but 5 yards in the air. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense to have your best receiver run 20 yards down the field when your quarterback can't make it there. Anyway, both defenses look fine. Both offenses look whatever. Kind of tragic for both. Not really. The Bucs offense wasn't bad. Like, Brady made some great throws. He also missed a couple. The offense looked how I expected it to look. I'm still like, the Bucs are fine. Like, the Bucs are for the people saying, oh, look at the Bucs. Like, did we really expect them to come into this game against the Saints, who had very little turnover, versus the Bucs, who Tom Brady's coming into a new system in a new system for the first time in 20 years? Like, did we really expect the Bucs to just instantly click? Like, we have to think about that. Like. And they play the Panthers next week. Like, everyone who tried to write the Bucs off this week might look pretty dumb next week because the Panthers aren't good in the secondary, at least. Like, they could light them up. If they don't, I wouldn't be too surprised, because I don't expect them to be great off the rip. But I mean, against the Panthers, they should probably win. They should probably look pretty good against the Panthers. But it is what it is now. The Saints. I mean, their defense. I mean, they got a pick six. They really weren't that good, though. They really weren't that good. but they won the game because they didn't make a mistake. Which, in the end, winning the turnover battle is something that is pretty important, and the Bucs turned it over twice. So, like, other than the fact that they didn't turn the ball over, which they probably should have, because Drew Brees threw it to defenders on a couple occasions. I mean, other than that, I mean, the Saints don't look too hot, and the Bucs, they didn't look great. But like I said earlier, like repeating myself for the 8th time by now, I didn't expect them to look great anyway. On to the next game. 49ers versus the Cardinals, reigning Super Bowl runner-ups. 49ers, Jimmy G didn't look good at all. But you also have to take into account the fact that they came in with injured receivers, and George Kittle also got injured in the game. I mean, you could say it was due to Jimmy Garoppolo's doing. Like, Jimmy G wasn't good. That pass was not good. Jimmy G was bad. He was not a good quarterback. He was spinning around in the pocket like a buffoon. That's just one play. Let me calm down. But no, he wasn't great. He missed a ton of throws, and he missed a ton of throws badly. He was... he wasn't good. Kyler Murray was okay. He ran the ball really well, though. DeAndre Hopkins looked great. So, this Cardinals team is sort of encouraging. Even though neither of these two teams played well, though. Too well. The Cardinals were pretty solid. Byron Murphy made some plays at the end of the game to kind of secure them the win. But, I don't know. I don't think either of these two teams are competing for first place in the division. If the Seattle Seahawks play like they did this week, then it's the Seahawks division. But if they don't, then either of these two teams have a shot to win the division. There's some good teams. This division's pretty good. We already knew this preseason, but this division's good. It's good. Probably, it's the best one in football. It's good. This division is good. And the Cardinals are showing that they belong. Winning this game, they had a pretty tough defense. Even though Isaiah Simmons was god-awful in coverage, they still had a pretty good defense. Pretty solid defensive outing. Javon Kinlaw was pretty good in his debut. And, the young players, like Byron Murphy, who was arguably, you could make the argument, was one of the worst corners in the NFL. He allowed 700 yards and 10 touchdowns. But looks like he's making up for it this year, making some pretty damn good plays in coverage in clutch situations to win the game. Jimmy G was bad, but he didn't have any competent receivers on the field, really. George Kittle got injured. He had an injured Kittle. So, supporting cast was damaged, and Jimmy G is someone that does depend on his supporting cast a bit more than others. So, yeah, let's get on to the next game, which is the Sunday night football game. Cowboys versus the Los Angeles Rams in the new SoFi Stadium, giving me some real AT&T Stadium vibes, not going to lie. From the inside, it looks almost identical. From the broadcast angle, at least. From the outside, SoFi looks great. Rams jerseys, not so great. They're not terrible. I don't hate the gray ones, but 20-17, they beat the Rams who, they beat the Cowboys, who people had as in the Super Bowl. I didn't have them in the Super Bowl. I thought they made the playoffs and win the NFC East, which is probably still possible. But, not probably, which is still possible, but not off to a great note. The Rams and Jared Goff had the lowest ADOT in the NFL this past week. And I mean, they were really holding Jared Goff's hand. They were like really holding Jared Goff's hands this week. Jared Goff has the lowest ADOT in the NFL right now. Like, Goff, I mean, he was fine, but it's not like he had to do much. They ran play action almost like every snap. Booted him out. 41% of his dropbacks for a whole 9 yards per attempt, which is pretty good. I thought it was probably less than that, but, like, I mean, they got a lot of yards after the catch, though. So, I mean, like, they really held Jared Goff's hand through this game, where they just basically said, Dak, it's on you, bud. And he played relatively well. It's not like he was lighting the world on fire, but he had a decent game. He made some throws, some tough throws. He played well. I mean, Zeke ran the ball pretty well. It didn't really matter. He probably touched the ball a bit more than he should have in the run game, at least. And they lost the game. I'm not saying it was because of that, but they lost the game. They went forward on fourth down. I'm not saying it's because of this anyway. They went forward on fourth either. I'm not saying it was because of that either. They went forward on fourth down in a spot where you probably should be going forward on fourth down. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up there because I don't hate the decision. I don't hate the decision, but, I mean, you're throwing short of the sticks on fourth down, which is odd. Like, I don't really even hate the play call. Just probably not. I mean, they just got out-executed on that play. And they still even got the ball back because of, they still even got the ball back because of Sean McVay making the wrong fourth down decision throughout the game. Punting the ball at midfield on, like, fourth and shorts, like, I don't know, man. They could have put that game away easily if they just leveraged going forward on fourth down a bit more. But the Cowboys, I mean, they didn't suck on offense, but they also weren't the fireworks show we might have expected them to be. The Cowboys, in terms of EPA per play on offense, this game ranked only 20th. So, I mean, it's definitely not what we expected. It's only, like I said, for most of these games, it's only a small sample size. It's only 1 week. But their defense didn't look great. Like, their pass rush wasn't hitting home, mainly because Sean McVay was doing stuff to mitigate it by play action, getting the ball out of Jared Goff's hands relatively quickly. And their secondary sucks. So, which is a pretty big problem I had, and a gripe I had about their team coming into the season. Maybe they're not on this Super Bowl-esque trajectory, but they should still be a team that could probably beat anybody any week because of the enormous amounts of talent they have on their team. And then you had that last play with Gallup, the OPI. I mean, very questionable call, but it is what it is now. LA wins the game. You could say sneak out, or you could say you could say sneak. You could say snuck out of that game with a win. And now we're going to go to the last two games, the Monday night slate. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the doubleheader. Let's start with the first one of Monday night, Pittsburgh versus New York. This game, Daniel Jones was actually pretty good, except for throwing the ball right to TJ Watt, which might not have been completely on him. Like, there was almost no way that he would have known that TJ Watt was going to drop back to get that. I mean, the second one was bad, where he just tossed it up into the air, basically. But Daniel Jones was pretty good. This game. Big Ben, on the other hand, was also pretty good. Made some he missed a ton of throws in, like, the short game early in the game. But then he looked like Big Ben, standing in the pocket, made a great throw, took a huge hit, looked like he got hurt again, but, that's just Big Ben, so. And then he made the other play in the red zone under pressure for the Juju touchdown on the left side of the field. Deontay Johnson was dropping passes, which isn't great for my fantasy team, but he wasn't too bad. He got a pretty good amount of targets. I think he might have, if I'm not mistaken, he might have out-targeted Juju. Juju just got most of the volume in the red zone, which led to his touchdown, which led to better touchdown efficiency or better touchdowns, a higher amount of touchdowns. Deontay Johnson had 10 targets compared to Juju Smith-Schuster's 6. So if you're like me and a Deontay Johnson fantasy owner, don't hang your head down too low. Don't cut him yet. Like he is getting more targets than Juju. Juju is getting targets in more advantageous positions, like the red zone, which equal more points, more touchdowns, more points. But Deontay Johnson should be fine. He's getting a good amount of volume. He just dropped a couple passes. But yeah, Big Ben, he looked better than I thought he would look. The defense looked great. The name of the game for those Monday night games, though, was pounding the rock with your running back, even though it wasn't working at all. Like, the Giants should have gave up on the run earlier. Same with Tennessee. I'll get on to that a little bit later. But, yeah, Big Ben was better than I expected him to be to start off the year. He was actually pretty... He was better. Like I said, he was way better than I thought he would be. Like, he was way more accurate than I thought he would be for most of the game. Like, he started off the game, like, pretty inaccurate, but he finished the game off with making some great throws, and they won the game as they should have. Giants let him off the hook, though. Multiple chances where the Giants should have went for it on fourth downs, and they didn't. Like I say this a lot, they didn't leverage fourth downs enough, and they had one where it was like 3rd and 2. They took a delay of game, and then they punted the ball. Like, that's not the most ideal thing to do at all. But like Daniel Jones was pretty encouraging. Like he was pretty good. So, I mean, the Giants, they still might have the worst secondary in the NFL, even though James Bradbury actually wasn't that bad. James Bradbury made some plays, but I still really don't like their group that much. But, like, I mean, their offense, not their offense, but Daniel Jones in specific also looked much better than I expected him to look in game number 1 or in general. He's one of those volatile guys. Just going to bring you some big plays, bring you some bad plays. The Giants still probably have the worst secondary in the NFL. I like what their weapons can do. I mean, it is what it is. Let's get to the last game of the week. Titans versus Broncos. This game felt like it lasted about 7 hours. This game was long and boring. Derrick Henry got about 700 carries for 100 yards. And, everyone's going to look, 100-yard game. Derrick Henry, or almost 100-yard game for Derrick Henry. He wasn't really good in this. He had 116. He had 116 yards. And he played poorly. Maybe not poorly, but he wasn't great. 3.7 per carry. That's not great. And I think the biggest takeaway of this game is the fact that Stephen Gostkowski missed 3 kicks, and the game was still tied 7-7 through the duration of the entire game. I think that says something about Drew Lock and the Broncos. As their offense was very blah. It was like anything that was above 10, like 5 yards in the air, might have been a little bit too much for Drew Lock. He attacked the short game very, very hard. It's just I don't know. He's conservative. He is very conservative. He doesn't attack down the field often. Most of his passes came in the 0 to 9 yard range or behind the line of scrimmage. So, like Drew Lock, he's not an aggressive quarterback, but Jerry Jeudy looked great. Like, he looked almost unguardable from the slot for the Denver Broncos. That's really encouraging because when you get Courtland Sutton back, who's going to be on the outside, maybe get a little bit more attention, he might leech some targets away, feasting on some of these slot corners in the NFL, even though, because like slot corner is undervalued in the market, I would say that NFL teams don't value it as high as they should value it, because you have guys like Jerry Jeudy in the slot now who are going to dominate guys when you try to cut costs there. Like, it's a valuable position. This game was boring. It lasted forever. It felt, at least. Steven Gostkowski was god-awful, and the Broncos' offense was pretty god-awful, as they were just bad. Like, they couldn't put up points. Like, they couldn't put up points. Gostkowski missed, like I said earlier, he missed 3 kicks, and they didn't score points at all. It was 7-7 the whole game, despite the fact that the Titans were missing every kick possible. So, yeah, but the Denver Broncos, 25th in EPA per play on offense, which, as you know, is not good. I mean, the Titans, they were 10th in EPA per play on offense. And then on dropback, EPA on dropbacks were 29, but they were 29th in EPA per play on pass plays or dropbacks, which also include sacks. So they weren't a really efficient offense throwing the ball when Drew Lock dropped back, kind of like I expected him to be. Like, I don't know why this team is getting so much hype. We know almost nothing about Drew Lock. We know almost nothing about him. And what we do know about him from our college prior and some of the stuff that he showed in the NFL, which is consistent with his college prior, is that he's not that accurate of a quarterback. Like last year, had the highest uncatchable percentage of uncatchable passes in the 10 to 19 yard range. Something that stayed consistent with him from college. Like, he can zip it. But he's been way more conservative than I thought he would be coming into the NFL, though. He's making a ton of plays on the move and off balance, which I guess is encouraging, but like some of them are sort of unnecessary, probably. But I mean, I was already low on the Broncos coming in, but this performance from Denver was so uninspiring. It's not even funny. So I mean, whatever. Like, this team had an insane hype train due to what they drafted, which makes sense. But what we know about Drew Lock and what we also don't know about Drew Lock at the same time, like, what we don't know much about him in the NFL, but what we know about him from college and what he showed in the NFL that also was consistent in college was, like, inaccuracy, and it showed up in the NFL, and he's not that great of a quarterback. He wasn't that good. He had a dropped interception. I think he might have had 2. Same with Tannehill. This game was messy. That's why I felt like it was 7 hours. It was boring. The Titans should have let go of the run game long before they should have got to 30 carries. But whatever. This game was terrible. It was a mess. It was boring. It felt like 9 hours. The theme of the Monday night apparently was pound the rock until, I don't know, because both teams, the Giants and Titans, pounded the rock until something happened, I guess. They sucked running the ball. And then A.J. Brown dropped that touchdown in the end zone, or whatever the hell he did to it, in the end zone. I mean, I have A.J. Brown on fantasy, bro. Come on, you can't be doing that stuff, man. But Tannehill made some nice throws, also did some Tannehill things, like take sacks and get cracked from all angles as if he was Joe Flacco. Like, sometimes he looked like he didn't know the pressure was there, even though he evaded it, and then kind of, like, got sacked by the same pressure he evaded, as if he didn't know the pressure was there at all. But that's Tannehill. He made some really good throws, too. Had that drive to win the game, which felt really weird, too. As we were, like, running the ball. It felt like you should be going for a touchdown when your kicker hasn't made a kick all game, but whatever. Maybe I'm just insane. Okay, whatever. Like, it's the end of the podcast. We've met the end. I've ran out of things to ramble on for the Titans versus the Broncos. Broncos suck. Titans didn't look too great. Even though Tannehill didn't, it didn't look like he fell off. It didn't look like he fell off of a cliff like I thought he might. But it's also not like he looked like he did last year. Like, he might just be an average quarterback, which might be enough to float this team and coast this team into the playoffs, potentially. I don't know. It is what it is, though. This game, I've said that phrase 1,000 times today, but this podcast is over now. I ran out of things to ramble on for these games. And hopefully you guys enjoy, subscribe, follow my Twitter, all that good shit, you know. We're out. Peace.